Greetings. Before we get into this clip, I'd like to share something that took me years to learn. Just because you feel something during a ritual doesn't mean that it's a spirit talking. Most people never pause to ask, is this my intuition or just my emotional baggage wearing a mask? In this clip, I talk about how meditation and mental discipline are the foundation of real magic. If you skip this part, the spirits you meet might just be of your own confusion. Let's get into it.
That's interesting. Now, I always find when I'm astral traveling, meditating, I tend to bring human experiences with me
Mm-hmm.
in a way of, I almost, it's almost in a way of creating psychic warfare. You remembering that one person that did one thing to you, then you going with your astral armor, your astral weapons in that way, and going for their astral body. Now, I've, it's a very interesting one with that in that element because once you take the humanness, like I said, it's beyond understanding. But I find that I bring, and I'm sure other people do, maybe you do, I don't know, but bring humanness into, like, for example, after travel, I'm bored. I want to go and check out what this place looks like right now, what my, such and such's house that I went to when I was a child looks like now. Or when I'm meditating, bringing in those human things of, after traveling and trying to interact with physical objects, trying to, I think it's hard when you're stuck in a 3D body with ego to just be. It's it's I wouldn't say impossible, but I'd say extremely difficult.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is part of the magical training. This is part of why meditation is so important. Because I made a distinction earlier between the physical body, the hardware, the mind, which is the software, and most people stop there. And then there's the user. And the user has to be known. You've got to develop a relationship with the user. Like I said, most people stop at the software portion. But everybody knows their body. Some people don't want to go past that. But yeah, you're right. When you sit and meditate, when you dream, when we are left to when we go within, basically, what we interface with is our experiences, and there's a reason for that. It's not a bad thing. What the issue is learning how to translate that, because what's happening on the internal plane is that objective experiences become subjective, and subjective experiences become objective. What does that mean? In the physical plane, it's just raw data, but we make sense of it. If somebody gives me a hug, my mind comes up with a meaning. Oh, she must be into me. Let me ask her for a date, right? None of that's
Mm,
true. That's just the meaning I put on it. The only thing that happened was a hug. So on the subjective plane, if I think of that memory, there's a feeling attached to it, right? And if I follow that feeling, that's going to lead me to a specific energy, right? So when we bring these human experiences into the dream or into the astral projection, the way that we look at it, or the way that's useful and appropriate to look at it, is by trying to read the energy behind these experiences. That's how we
yeah,
interface and practice at first. And then eventually what happens is when we learn to decode these symbols, this is how we decode dreams, right? When you learn to decode the energy behind these experiences, eventually with practice, you can leave the experiences behind and just deal with the energy. And then I haven't gotten this far, but there's a level after the energy, right? After being able to just interface the colors and the energy, there's past that, there's even more raw data that doesn't require a mask or a symbol or something to represent it. I think that's the language that the true self speaks. That's the language that the spirit speaks. The soul speaks in symbols and the body speaks in objective experiences. But like I said, the occultist learns how to see through the illusion and get straight to the energy.
yeah. And I definitely think that becomes difficult for most people with things like ego. And the hug example that you gave, that's perfect. That thing of it's it's again the reflection of your belief. My belief, what I was taught is if I get a hug from a girl, like what you said, I shall relate that type of thing is exactly the reflection of our belief
Mm-hmm.
is exactly. So you're right. If you take that away, if you take the belief, the mask, what you're left with is vision. I suppose after that stage, you're not a blind man seeing better than everyone else. You're seeing the same as everyone else when you get to that level.
Mm.
But when everyone gets to that level, you're all seeing everything perfectly. You don't need these glasses in a way to make your vision better, to focus it the way you want it. It strips. What we're speaking of reminds me a lot of DMT. Now, DMT experiences are interesting because it it does literally strip everything away. I do feel, especially now if you talk to people, it's the most common way I feel people have ego deaths. Now it's the same thing though as the humanity of looking for something outside of yourself to trigger that. But that's what it reminds me of that being, of that just clear vision of seeing, you know, these entities, being able to communicate with them without the mask, without the speech, without the body, just being and vision. That's the word that I'm sticking with, is vision and understanding.